The first time I saw the file, I thought it was a mistake, a simple system error, something old left behind in the database. But the line kept blinking on my screen, steady, patient, like it was waiting for me to notice it. RAVNSWOD Asylum, Wing 6, active. Active. That word didn't belong there. Ravenswood Asylum had been closed for 30 years. Everyone in the department knew that. It was one of those places you only talk about in quiet voices during night shifts. Old building, old scandals, records sealed, patients transferred or lost in paperwork no one wanted to open again. And yet there it was. Active. I leaned closer to the monitor, the hum of the archive room pressing into my ears. Fluorescent lights buzzing above me like tired insects. Rows of dusty servers lined the walls, each one holding the memories of hospitals that no longer existed. My job was simple. Digitize old asylum records, scan, upload, organize, that's it. No surprises. No questions. But the system had just given me one anyway. I clicked the file. It opened too fast. Too clean. A layout appeared. Floor plans, patient logs, staff schedules. All labeled under Wing 6. My stomach tightened slightly, though I didn't know why. It looked real. Too real. Updated timestamps. Recent system activity. Yesterday. That was impossible. I scrolled down slowly, feeling my fingers go a little cold. The staff list showed names I didn't recognize. Some had no last names. Some had no first names at all. Just initials. And one entry that made me pause longer than I should have. Night supervisor. The name field was blank, but the role was active. Green status indicator. Logged in. At 02:13 a.m. I glanced at the office clock. 02:14 a.m. A coincidence, I told myself. That's all. But the air in the room felt slightly heavier now, like the building had leaned in closer. I tried to close the file. The button didn't respond. I clicked again. Nothing. A soft notification popped up instead. Access required. Archivist confirmation. I frowned. I had full access. There shouldn't be any restrictions. Still, I typed my credentials. The system accepted them instantly. And then, without delay, the screen changed. A new folder opened. Wing 6 Audio LOGS, Live Feed enabled. My hand froze above the mouse. Live feed. That didn't make sense. Asylum audio logs were decades old. They were archived, not streamed. But before I could react, sound came through my speakers. Soft at first, almost like static. Then something else slipped through. Laughter. Children's laughter. Not loud, not sharp. Just distant. Like it was coming from the end of a long hallway. No one had walked in years. I pulled my headphones off immediately, heart jumping once in my chest. The archive room went silent again. Only the buzzing lights returned. I stared at the speakers like they had betrayed me. No, I whispered to myself, that's not possible. But my eyes drifted back to the screen anyway. The audio feed was still running. Timestamp live. My cursor hovered over the mute button. But something stopped me. A detail I hadn't noticed before. The audio source location. Ravenswood Asylum, Wing 6, Corridor B. My throat went dry. Corridor B had been sealed in the official closure report. Concrete wall, reinforced doors, no access, no electricity. No reason for anything to still be active there. Yet the feed continued. And now I could hear something else beneath the laughter. Footsteps. Slow. Dragging slightly. Not rushing. Like whoever it was had all the time in the world. I leaned back in my chair, forcing myself to breathe slower. Old system echo, I muttered. Just corrupted audio, that's all. But even as I said it, I knew I didn't believe it. The room felt colder now. Not dramatically, just enough to notice. Just enough to bother me. I reopened the file logs, scanning through patient records again. Most were redacted, black lines across names and diagnoses, but one pattern kept repeating. All entries in Wing 6 were updated recently. Not old scans, not archived copies, recent edits. I stopped scrolling when I saw a patient file with a full name visible. Patient 31, Nor A. Status under observation. Admission date 3 hours ago. My breath caught slightly. 3 hours ago. That was impossible. Ravenswood Asylum had been closed for decades. My cursor trembled a little as I clicked the file. It opened. A photo loaded slowly. Blurry at first, then clearer. A young girl, sitting on a hospital bed, looking directly at the camera. Her eyes weren't smiling, but the laughter in the audio feed suddenly changed pitch. Like she had noticed me. My chair creaked as I leaned closer without thinking. The girl in the photo tilted her head slightly. Just a small movement. Almost natural. Almost impossible. I blinked hard. The image didn't change, but something about it felt different now, like it wasn't just a photo anymore. Like it was watching back. A new notification appeared in the corner of the screen. Ward stability check required. Below it, proceed to Wing 6 main terminal for verification. I sat still. No, that was not part of my job. Archivists don't go to closed asylum wings. We don't verify anything on site. Everything is supposed to be digital. Safe, separated, controlled. But the system didn't wait for my agreement. The screen dimmed slightly, then brightened again. A map appeared, and a path highlighted itself. From my location to Wing 6, I stared at it for a long moment. Then I laughed once, nervously shaking my head. This is insane. But even as I said it, I stood up. I don't know why. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the kind of professional instinct that refuses to ignore corrupted data. Or maybe because the laughter in the speakers had stopped, and silence felt worse. I grabbed my access badge. The hallway outside the archive room was darker than usual, or maybe it just felt that way. The emergency lights along the floor blinked faintly, like tired eyes. Every step I took echoed longer than it should have. The building was supposed to be empty at this hour. But as I walked, I thought I heard something behind me. A soft shuffle. I turned quickly. Nothing. Just rows of locked office doors. Still, quiet, except the system notification on my phone vibrated once. A message. Not from it. Not from security. Just a simple line. Don't let them know you heard them yet. My fingers tightened around the phone. My heart started beating faster now. Because I hadn't told anyone about the laughter. Not a single word. And still someone or something already knew. The hallway lights flickered once, then stayed on. But something about them felt weaker, like they were losing power even though the display on the wall said everything was normal. I stood in front of the old intercom panel, my fingers hovering just above the dusty buttons. It shouldn't even be working. That was the first thought in my mind. Ravenswood Asylum had been shut for 30 years. Everything here was supposed to be dead systems. Cut wires, removed power lines, no active circuits. And yet the panel was humming. Softly, like it was breathing. I leaned closer. A thin layer of dust covered the metal surface, except around one button. Wing 6. That button was clean. Too clean. Like someone had pressed it recently. My throat tightened a little, but I told myself it was probably maintenance error. Old building, old electricity leaks, things like that happen. Still, my hand didn't move forward. Not at first. Then the speaker above me crackled. Just once. A sharp pop of static that made me flinch. I looked up fast. Nothing moved. Only the dark ceiling vents stared back at me. "Hello," I said quietly, even though I wasn't sure who I expected to answer. Only silence came back. I let out a slow breath and pressed the Wing 6 button. A long pause followed. Too long. Like the building was deciding whether I was allowed to listen. Then, static, soft at first, then rising, then something inside it shifted. A sound slipped through that didn't belong in any system. A child laughing. I froze completely. Not because it was loud. It was distant, almost playful, like it was coming from a room far away, or a memory that didn't want to stay buried. I pulled my hand away from the panel instantly. The laughter stopped at the exact same moment, like it was waiting for my attention. The silence that followed felt heavier than before. My heart started beating faster now. I looked at the panel again. The Wing 6 light was still on. Green. Active. That shouldn't be possible. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, opening the facility system log. My fingers were slightly shaky now, but I forced myself to stay calm. The system showed no outgoing audio connection. No active speakers. No power routing to Wing 6. Nothing. Just dead lines. So what did I just hear? A second later, the intercom crackled again. This time without me touching anything. Test, test. A woman's voice. Soft. Broken. Not clear enough to place, but it didn't sound like modern audio. It sounded recorded, old, stretched. Then suddenly, the child laughter returned. Closer this time. My eyes darted around the hallway. Empty. No movement. No shadow shifting. But the sound, it wasn't coming from the speaker anymore. It felt like it was inside the building itself. I took a slow step back. The intercom panel flickered. For a moment, the display changed. Instead of Wing 6, it showed something else. Ward 6 occupied. I stared at it. My brain refused to accept it. Occupancy requires live patients, live monitoring, medical staff. But Ravenswood had no patience. Not anymore. Right. The display flickered again. Now it showed 12 children present. My breath stopped for a second. 12. That number hit harder than it should have. Because I remembered the file I saw earlier. Patient 31, nor A. And nothing else. No record of others. No list of admissions. No explanation. Just that one file, and now this number appearing out of nowhere. I stepped closer without thinking. My reflection on the panel looked slightly distorted, like the metal surface wasn't flat anymore. Like it was bending inward. Then the laughter returned again. But this time it wasn't distant. It was right above me. I snapped my head up. The ceiling vent. Something about it felt different now. The metal grill was slightly open. Just a crack. I was sure it was closed before. I didn't remember touching anything. Slowly, I raised my flashlight. The beam hit the vent. Nothing visible inside. Only darkness. But the laughter continued. Soft, constant, like a group of children sitting just out of sight. I swallowed hard. "Hello," I whispered again, even though I already hated the sound of my own voice in that moment. The laughter stopped. Instantly. Again. Like before. Like it was reacting to me. The silence stretched for a few seconds. Then, a small sound. Not laughter this time. A whisper. Very faint. Coming from inside the vent. "Don't turn it off." My body went cold. I stepped back fast. My shoe hit something on the floor behind me. A loose cable. But I knew it wasn't connected to anything. I looked down. The cable was old. Too old. Covered in dust, except for the tip. The tip was clean. Like it had been dragged recently. Toward the intercom panel. I felt a strange pressure in my chest. Like the room was getting smaller. I forced myself to look back at the panel. The screen had changed again. Now it showed. Audio test in progress. Below it, LISTNING required. My hands clenched slightly. No, this wasn't a system test. This felt wrong. Like the building was testing me instead. I took one step back. Then another. And that's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The hallway behind me was longer than before. I remembered exactly how I walked in. Only a short corridor. 10 steps maybe. Now it looked stretched. Dim lights fading further than they should. Like the building had extended itself while I wasn't looking. I turned my head slowly back toward the intercom. The laughter started again. But now it wasn't random. It had rhythm. Like counting. 1, 2, 3. Children counting. But not like a game. More like practice. Like they had done it many times before. My phone vibrated. A new system message. No sender again. Just text. Don't acknowledge them when they count. My eyes widened slightly. Because I hadn't told anyone I could hear counting. The intercom crackled again. The woman's voice returned. This time clearer. Not fully formed, but close enough to feel real. Audio test is required for continuation of Wing 6 access. Then a pause. Then softer. If you respond, they will notice you. I froze. My breathing slowed without me meaning it to. The counting continued. Now closer. Now synchronized with my heartbeat. I pressed my back against the wall instinctively. The hallway lights flickered once more. And for a fraction of a second, I saw something inside the intercom panel reflection. Not my face. Not exactly. A group of small shapes standing behind me. Just silhouettes. Child-sized. But when I spun around, nothing. Only empty corridor. Still. Silent. Except for the counting. Now right beside me. Inside the walls. My fingers slowly moved toward the intercom panel again. I didn't know why. I shouldn't have. But something about it pulled me forward. Like I was part of the test now. Like I had already started listening, and there was no way to unhear it. The display changed one final time. Voice response required. And beneath it, do not stop LISTNING. The laughter stopped completely. And in that sudden silence, I realized something worse. The building wasn't playing audio. It was waiting for me to speak back. The first thing I noticed when I stepped back into Ward 6 was that the room felt tighter. Not physically at first, but in a way my mind couldn't explain. Like the air had less space to move. Like the walls had shifted while I wasn't looking. The intercom behind me was still glowing faintly. Voice response required still on the screen. But I didn't answer it. I couldn't. Instead, I turned away slowly and walked down the corridor leading into Ward 6. My footsteps echoed differently this time. Heavier, like the building was listening through the floor. And then I saw it. The beds. I stopped instantly. There were too many. I remember clearly what the blueprint showed earlier. 12 beds, neatly arranged in 2 rows. Old hospital layout, simple, empty. But now, there were 13. I blinked once. Slow, careful, because sometimes your brain lies in places like this. But it didn't change. 13 beds, not 12. My throat tightened a little. I stepped closer, scanning each one slowly. Metal frames, thin mattresses, old white sheets folded perfectly. Too perfectly. Like no one had touched them in years, but also like someone had just made them. I counted again under my breath. 1, 2, 3. I reached 13. I stopped. My mind tried to argue with itself. Maybe I miscounted earlier. Maybe I missed one. But I knew I didn't, because I had studied that floor plan. I had memorized it without realizing. 12 beds, not 13. I walked slowly down the row, my fingers slightly brushing the railings. Cold metal. No dust. That was the second wrong thing. Everything in Ravenswood was supposed to be abandoned. But this ward looked maintained. Not new. Not modern. Just cared for. Like someone still cleaned it. My phone vibrated. I almost didn't want to look at it. But I did anyway. New system message. No sender. Only text. Bed count updated. My stomach dropped slightly. I looked up fast. The room hadn't changed. But now I couldn't trust that. Because last time I looked, it was 12. I turned around quickly and walked back toward the entrance. My footsteps echoed louder now. Faster. Like something behind me was trying to match my pace. I didn't look back. Not yet. I reached the doorway and stopped outside the ward. I took a breath. Slow. Controlled. Then I stepped back in again. Just to test it. Just to prove I wasn't losing my mind. The moment I crossed the threshold, I felt it again. That subtle shift. Like walking into a slightly different version of the same room. My eyes went straight to the beds. I counted instantly. 1, 2, 3, 4. My chest tightened. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I stopped. 14. There were 14 beds now. I stepped back out immediately. My breath came sharper, faster. My hand pressed against the wall outside the ward. Cold concrete. Real. Stable. But the room inside wasn't stable anymore. It was changing. I stood there for a moment, trying to force logic into my head. Maybe I miscounted. Maybe the lighting shifted. Maybe I was stressed. But deep down I knew the truth. The beds were increasing. Every time I entered. I exhaled slowly and stepped in again. This time I didn't look at anything else. Only the beds. 15. I stepped out. 16. I stepped in again. 17. My stomach turned now. Because it wasn't random. It was consistent. Every entry added one more bed. I stepped out again, paused. My hand trembled slightly. This wasn't a glitch. This wasn't old wiring. This felt like the room was responding to me, like I was feeding it something every time I walked in. I whispered under my breath, "What is happening here?" And for the first time, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. At the far end of the ward, a clipboard hanging on a metal stand. It wasn't there earlier. I was sure of it. I walked slowly toward it. Each step felt heavier than the last. The beds didn't matter anymore. They were background noise now. My attention locked on that clipboard. As I got closer, I saw writing. Neat handwriting. Fresh ink. Not old. The top line read, Ward 6 occupancy log. My fingers hesitated before touching it. Then I pulled it closer. The first page was simple. Bed numbers listed, 1 through 12, all marked occupied. But below that, new lines had been added. Occupied, occupied, occupied. My breath stopped for a second, because those entries were written in real time. The ink still looked slightly wet. I flipped the page quickly. More numbers. Occupied, occupied. And then, a blank line at the bottom. Waiting, like it expected more. My phone vibrated again. This time I almost dropped it. New message. Do not leave the ward after entry. I froze, slowly looked up from the clipboard. The beds behind me were silent, still, perfectly arranged, but I didn't trust them anymore, because I knew if I turned around and counted again, the number would be different. I swallowed hard, and that's when I heard it. A soft sound, not laughter this time, not static, breathing, very faint, coming from one of the beds behind me. I didn't move. I didn't turn. I just listened. One breath, then another. Slow, patient, like something had just woken up because I was paying attention. My fingers tightened around the clipboard. And then, a whisper came from the far end of the ward. Very soft, almost gentle. Don't reset it again. My eyes closed for half a second, because I understood something I didn't want to understand. Every time I left and came back, I wasn't resetting the room. I was updating it. I slowly turned my head just slightly toward the beds, but I didn't look directly at them. Not yet, because I suddenly felt something I couldn't explain. Like some of the beds were no longer empty, like they were waiting for me to acknowledge them. And behind me, the door I had entered through made a soft click, not closing, locking, and from the intercom system outside the ward, a faint child's laugh returned again. But this time, it wasn't coming from the speakers. It was coming from inside Ward 6. All around me. The names weren't there when I first walked in. I am sure of that. The hallway outside Ward 6 was empty. Just cracked paint, old warning signs, and a long stretch of silence that felt too thick to be normal. But when I came back out, the wall had changed. At first I thought it was shadows. Faint marks under the flickering light, like water stains or old pencil lines bleeding through paint. I stepped closer, and my breath slowed without permission, because they weren't stains. They were names, written in thin, uneven handwriting, like a child had pressed too hard while writing on a rough surface. I didn't touch them. Not yet. I just read the first one. Nora. My stomach tightened instantly. That name. I had seen it before. Patient file. Ward 6. But that made no sense. Because Nor A was supposed to be inside the system. A recorded patient. Not something written on a wall like this. I moved my flashlight slightly. More names appeared down the corridor. Not random. Not scattered. Organized. Like a list. Like attendance. My throat felt dry as I stepped forward slowly. The second name was faint but readable. Iamarian S. Then below it, Sarak. Then, Ahmadr. Each name looked freshly written, even though the wall itself was old and cracked. The paint around them was dry and peeling, but the ink looked alive, like it hadn't fully settled yet. I took out my phone, opened the Asylum records again, typed the names quickly. No matches. Nothing. No admissions. No files. No history. My fingers paused slightly. That wasn't possible. Every patient ever admitted to Ravenswood should be in the archive system. Even the sealed ones. Even the erased ones. But these names, they didn't exist anywhere. I looked up again, and now the hallway felt longer. Not physically changing like Ward 6, but visually deeper. Like the corridor was stretching its silence. The lights above flickered once, and in that flicker, I saw something new. More names had appeared, written further down the wall, as if they were being added while I looked away for just a second. My heartbeat started to rise again. I walked closer, carefully, each step echoing like it didn't belong to me anymore. The next section of names was slightly different. Some were crossed out, not erased, just scratched through, like someone tried to remove them but failed. I leaned closer and read one of the crossed names, Zanabl. A chill moved through my chest, because the scratch marks didn't look random. They looked intentional, like someone tried to stop that name from being seen. But it still remained, half alive on the wall. My phone vibrated again. I almost dropped it. New system message. Same anonymous sender. Do not trust written records in Wing 6 corridor. My eyes stayed locked on the wall, because now I understood something worse. The system wasn't warning me about the names. It was reacting to them, like it already knew what they were. I turned slightly. The hallway behind me was empty. Too empty, but the silence felt heavier now, like it had weight, like something was standing just outside my vision. I took a slow breath and stepped forward again. The names continued, but now something changed. Some of them were incomplete, half-written, letters trailing off into nothing, as if the writer had stopped mid-word or been interrupted. Ali, Mehi, Es. It made no sense until I noticed something small. The incomplete names always appeared at eye level, but the complete ones were lower, closer to the floor. My flashlight dropped slightly, and that's when I saw it. A child-sized handprint on the wall, right under one of the names. My breath stopped. The handprint wasn't old. It was fresh, dark, like someone had pressed inked fingers into the wall just moments ago. I stepped back instinctively, and that's when I heard it. A soft scratching sound. Not loud, not aggressive, just slow, patient, coming from further down the corridor. I moved the flashlight toward it. The The beam revealed something that made my chest tight. A pencil, scratching across the wall on its own. No hand holding it. No visible person. Just the sound of writing. Slow, careful, adding another name. I couldn't move for a second. My mind refused to process what I was seeing. The pencil stopped. The new name appeared. Hudan. Fresh ink. Still dark. Still wet. My phone buzzed again. But I didn't look this time. I couldn't take my eyes off the wall. Because now the names were not just appearing. They were reacting. As if they knew I was watching. A soft whisper drifted through the corridor. Not from one direction. From all sides. Read them. I stepped back slowly. My heel hit something behind me. I turned. Nothing there. But the moment I turned back, another name had appeared. Right next to me. So close I could read it without moving. KSHIFR. My own name. My breath locked in my throat. For a moment I couldn't move. Couldn't think. Just stared at it. The ink looked new. Like it had just been written seconds ago. My phone fell slightly in my hand. I didn't even feel it. Because the wall wasn't just listing names anymore. It was responding to me. To my presence. To my thoughts. I backed away slowly. 1 step. 2 steps. The hallway lights flickered again. And in that flicker, I saw something standing at the far end of the corridor. Small. Still. Child-sized. But when the light stabilized, it was gone. Only the names remained. Now all of them slightly darker. More defined. Like they had gained weight. My breathing became uneven. I forced myself to look away from the wall and focus on my phone. System records still showed nothing. No matches for any names. No patients. No admissions. Just blank history. Which meant one thing. These names were not from the system. They were from the place itself. The building. Or something inside it. A soft sound interrupted my thoughts. A child's voice. Very close now. Not laughing this time. Just reading. Slowly. Behind me. Ali Sarah Imran. I turned instantly. No one. But the voice continued. Coming from the wall. Or inside it. Or beneath it. I couldn't tell anymore. I stepped forward again. Against my own instinct. And placed my flashlight directly on the names. That's when I saw it. A final line at the bottom. Blank before. Now filled. Slowly forming letters. One by one. As if being written in real time. And it said, all who read are added. My breath stopped completely. The corridor lights flickered one more time. And when they steadied, the list had grown longer. Not just names, but rows, extending further down the hallway than before. And at the very end, a new space was already waiting. Empty, like it expected the next one to be added. Like it was waiting for me to decide if I was already part of it. Behind me, Ward 6 door clicked softly again. Unlocked this time. And from inside the ward, I heard the faint sound of pages turning. Even though there were no books in there. The door wasn't there when I first walked the corridor. I am completely sure of that. Because I had walked this exact path 3 times already. First when I entered Ward 6. Second when I counted the beds changing. And third when I ran out after seeing my own name on the wall. Each time, the end of the corridor was the same. A dead wall, cracked paint, no exit, no continuation, just emptiness that told you to turn back. But now, there was a door, not old, not broken, not forced into the structure like maintenance work. It looked placed, like it belonged there from the beginning. Dark wood, smooth surface, no handle on the outside, just a small glass window at eye level. And behind it, light, soft, warm, completely wrong for this place. My breathing slowed without me realizing it. I didn't step closer right away, because my brain was still trying to accept the change. The corridor hadn't just added a door. It had rewritten itself. I looked back over my shoulder. The hallway behind me was still the same length, still lined with names on the walls, still alive with that quiet feeling of being watched. But now everything felt like it was pushing me forward. Not physically, just pressure, like the building had decided my direction already. I turned back to the door, and that's when I heard it. Soft laughter, not loud, not sharp, just close, like children sitting just behind the glass, waiting for me to notice them. My throat tightened slightly. I took one step forward. The floor creaked under me, even though I hadn't made enough noise to justify it. Another step. The laughter grew clearer, still gentle, still calm, but now it had rhythm, like they were reacting to me walking closer. I stopped in front of the door. My reflection barely showed in the glass window, only a faint silhouette. But behind it, I saw movement, shapes shifting in soft light, small figures, sitting, waiting. I didn't knock. I didn't speak, but the glass fogged slightly from the inside, as if something had leaned closer to it. Then a voice came through the door, a child's voice, very soft. "Are you here for treatment?" My chest tightened. Not fear yet. Something worse. Confusion mixed with recognition. Like the voice expected me. Like I had already answered this question before. I didn't respond. The silence stretched. Then the voice spoke again. Closer now. "We saved a bed for you." I felt my fingers twitch slightly. Behind me, the corridor lights flickered once. Just once. But that was enough to change how everything felt. Because when they stabilized, the names on the wall were gone. Not faded. Not erased. Gone completely. The wall looked clean. Empty. Like nothing had ever been written there. I turned slightly just to confirm. My breath caught. The entire list was gone. Only blank paint remained. Smooth, fresh, impossible. I turned back to the door fast, because I understood something I didn't want to understand. The building wasn't just adding things. It was removing evidence of what I saw, like it was correcting reality around me. The door creaked softly, without me touching it. The glass window fogged more, and the laughter inside became clearer, more layered now. Not one child, several, maybe more, all overlapping softly, like they were sitting too close together. I stepped back slightly. My heel hit something on the floor. I looked down. A clipboard, the same one from Ward 6. But now it was clean. No bed numbers. No occupancy logs. Just one line written in neat handwriting. Final admission pending. My fingers went cold as I picked it up, because I recognized the handwriting. It wasn't mine, but it looked like something I could have written. The door spoke again. Not the children this time. A calm adult voice. Soft. Controlled. Almost professional. Please don't stay outside too long. I froze. That voice. It sounded like the system messages. The ones guiding me here. The ones telling me not to leave Ward 6. Not to stop listening. Not to ignore the counting. It was the same voice. Just closer. More real. I swallowed slowly. Who are you? I finally whispered. The moment I spoke, the laughter inside the room stopped. Instantly, silence hit the corridor like a wave. Then the voice replied. Simple. We are the ones you counted. My stomach tightened. My mind went back to Ward 6. The beds. The names. The counting. The updates. Every time I entered, the numbers changed. Every time I observed, the system reacted. Like I wasn't just watching it. I was feeding it. The door window cleared slightly, and I saw more clearly now. Inside the room. It wasn't a hospital room. It looked like one, but too clean, too soft. White walls, neat beds, perfect lighting, but no edges felt real. Like the room was drawn from memory, not built from structure. And on every bed, figures sat quietly. Children, all facing the door, watching me, not moving, just waiting. One of them slowly raised a hand and waved. My breath stopped completely because I recognized her. Nora, the girl from the file, the one that started everything. She smiled slightly, not fully, just enough to show she was aware of me. And then she whispered something, so faint I almost missed it, but the glass carried it through. We are still being counted. My phone vibrated violently in my hand. I almost dropped it. One final system message appeared. No sender. Only text. You have reached Ward 0. My eyes widened slightly. Ward 0. That wasn't in any blueprint. Not in any archive. Not in any record. I stepped back instinctively. The door creaked again, opening just a little. Warm light spilled into the corridor, and with it, the sound of pages turning. Slow, constant, like a file being written in real time. I looked down at the clipboard again. The text had changed. Now it said, Archivist admitted. My breathing stopped for a second. No. That wasn't possible. I was still outside, still aware, still standing. But when I looked up again, the corridor behind me was gone. Not blocked, not closed, gone. Only the door remained. And the children inside were no longer sitting. They were standing now, closer to the glass, waiting, patient. The voice returned one last time. Soft, almost comforting. Your record has been updated. The door opened fully. Warm light wrapped around me like a hand. And as I stepped forward without fully realizing it, I understood the last missing piece. The asylum was never abandoned. It was just waiting for enough records to bring everything back into the system, including me. And as the door closed behind me slowly, the laughter started again. Not loud, not sharp, just familiar, like I had heard it all my life. And somewhere far outside the room, a new entry appeared in the archive system. Ward 6 active. The map was not supposed to exist. That was the first thing I told myself when I held it in my hands underwater. Because paper doesn't survive down here. Not at this depth. Not in this pressure. But it was there anyway, floating slightly inside a sealed metal tube, stuck between rusted pipes like something had placed it there on purpose. My flashlight shook a little as I brought it closer. The beam hit the paper, and my stomach tightened. A blueprint. Old, faded ink, but still readable. Ravenswood Sub-Level Facility. I froze for a second. Ravenswood again. That name was everywhere now. First the Asylum records, then Ward 6, then the names on the wall, and now this. But what made my breath stop wasn't the name. It was the location stamp at the bottom of the map. Structure classified below flood line. Below flood line. That made no sense. I adjusted my oxygen mask slightly, the sound of my breathing suddenly too loud inside my head. Because I knew this site. Everyone in the diving team knew it. This wasn't a structure. It was supposed to be open water. A submerged valley. Nothing built here had survived the flood mapping 30 years ago. And yet, there it was. A full facility layout. Corridors, rooms, even something labeled Ward Network. I swallowed slowly, my throat dry despite the water around me. My dive light flickered once. Just once. And in that flicker, I thought I saw something moving behind the pipes. I turned fast. Nothing. Only darkness and drifting particles in the water. But the feeling didn't go away. I looked back at the map. My glove traced over the ink slowly. The lines were strange. Not printed. Not drawn cleanly. They looked repeated. Like someone had redrawn the same structure over and over again until it became permanent. There were markings in red ink too. Old warnings. Some faded. Some still sharp. One word stood out clearly. Occupied. My chest tightened slightly. Occupied underwater didn't make sense. Nothing stays alive at this depth without support systems. No oxygen lines. No heat sources. No power grids. Just cold water and pressure. I checked my wrist gauge. Depth stable. Visibility low. Everything normal. But nothing about this felt normal anymore. I carefully folded the map and slipped it into my waterproof case. I should have left it. I knew that even as I did it. But something about it felt like evidence. Something I needed to keep. Something I needed to understand. My comms crackled suddenly. Lena, report status. It was Malik on the surface team. His voice sounded far away, slightly distorted. I pressed the mic. Found something, a structure map, I said slowly. A pause. Too long. Then, that's impossible. We scanned that area last month. Nothing exists there. I looked around again. Slow spin. My light cut through the water. And that's when I saw it. A shape in the distance. Not rocks. Not debris. Too straight. Too structured. My breath slowed. It looked like a wall. A vertical surface rising from the seabed. I adjusted my fins and moved closer. Every stroke felt heavier now. Like the water itself was resisting. The shape grew clearer as I approached. Concrete. Old. Cracked. But standing. A wall. Real. Man-made. My mind tried to reject it instantly. Because this was deep-sea collapse zone. Structures don't stand here. They get crushed. Flattened. Disappeared. But this was intact. And worse. There was a door embedded in it. Metal, half rusted, slightly open. My light trembled as I pointed it at the gap. Inside was darkness, but not empty darkness. Dense darkness, like something was blocking light from going further. My comms crackled again. "Lena, we're losing your signal. Move back to ascent point." I didn't answer immediately, because I saw something else now. On the wall next to the door, letters carved into concrete, not random scratches. Words. Slowly I moved closer. The water felt colder here. I read it slowly. Ward 6 SUBLEVEL access. My heart skipped once. Ward 6 again. But this wasn't possible. Ward 6 was land-based asylum infrastructure. Not underwater. Not here. I raised my light slightly and saw more carvings below it. Do not count inside. My breathing slowed, because that phrase felt familiar. Too familiar, like I had heard it somewhere before. My comms suddenly cut out halfway through Malik's voice. Static filled my ears. Then silence. Complete. I tapped the mic. Nothing. No response. I was alone. I turned my body slightly, checking my oxygen gauge again. Still stable, but something felt wrong with time now, like it wasn't moving the same way. I looked back at the door, and that's when I noticed it. The gap had widened, just slightly. It was more open now than before. I hadn't touched it. I swear I hadn't. My mind told me to leave. Now, immediately. But my body didn't move. Instead, I drifted closer, one slow motion at a time. The light from my torch slipped into the doorway and reflected back. Not darkness this time. A hallway. I froze completely, because underwater reflections don't behave like that. You don't see clean hallways underwater. But I did. A corridor, stretching forward. Dry. Impossible. My breath hitched inside my mask. I blinked hard, and it was still there. Not illusion. Not reflection. A real interior space. Inside a submerged structure. I reached the threshold slowly. My hand hovered near the door frame. And the moment I touched it, the water resistance vanished. Completely. My hand passed through the doorway like it wasn't even there. My body tilted forward slightly. And suddenly, I wasn't in water anymore. The sound changed instantly. No bubbles. No pressure hum. Just silence. Heavy silence. My suit was still wet, dripping onto the floor beneath me. But I was standing, inside a corridor. Dry. Cold. Lit by dim, flickering lights above. I looked back instantly. The doorway behind me still showed water. Like a window. Like I had stepped through something that shouldn't exist. My breathing sped up. "This is not possible," I whispered. My voice sounded too loud. Too real. The corridor stretched forward endlessly. Old hospital tiles. Cracked walls. Rusting pipes running along the ceiling. And doors. So many doors. Each labeled faintly. Ward A. Ward B. Ward C. I took a slow step forward. My boots made a sound on the floor. A sound I wasn't supposed to hear underwater. That's when I realized something worse. My dive computer had stopped updating. Depth reading frozen. Oxygen stable. Time glitching. Like I was no longer connected to the outside world. A faint sound echoed ahead. Not loud. Soft. like children laughing. My stomach tightened immediately. Ward 6 again. I kept moving, because I didn't know what else to do. Each step made the corridor feel longer, not physically changing, but emotionally stretching, like it didn't want me to reach the end too quickly. The laughter came again, closer now, still soft, still calm, but layered, multiple voices, like a group sitting just beyond my sight. I stopped in front of one door. It was slightly open. Inside I saw beds, neatly arranged, empty, but still made, perfectly, like someone expected patients to return at any moment. My flashlight flickered once, and in that flicker, one of the beds was no longer empty. A small shape sat on it, facing away. I stepped closer without meaning to, and the door behind me slowly clicked shut. The first thing I noticed inside the hallway was the air, or what should have been air. There wasn't supposed to be any. I remember that clearly. My suit was still wet, dripping behind me, but my breathing had changed the moment I stepped fully inside. No bubbles, no water pressure, just silence and something that felt like breath moving through the corridor. I stood still for a second, trying to understand what was happening to my body. My mask was still on, my oxygen system still active, but I wasn't breathing like I was underwater anymore. It felt like I was inside a building. A real one. Dry, cold, alive. I took one careful step forward. The sound of my boot echoed down the hallway. That shouldn't have been possible. Sound doesn't travel like that in submerged structures. But this place wasn't obeying anything I knew. The corridor stretched ahead in dim light. Flickering bulbs above cracked ceiling tiles. Walls lined with peeling paint. Old hospital signs, half burned into rusted metal plates. Ward A, Ward B, Ward C. Each door looked slightly open, like someone had just stepped out, or was about to come back in. I swallowed hard. My throat felt dry, even though I was supposed to be surrounded by ocean. That was the first contradiction. Dry throat, wet suit, impossible air. My comms were still dead. No signal, no surface connection. Just me and this corridor that should not exist. I started walking slowly. Each step echoed differently now. Not just sound, but weight, like the building was reacting to me. The further I went, the more I felt something subtle in the air. Movement, not wind, not water, something softer, like breathing. I stopped again, listened. Nothing at first. Then it came back, very faint, not through my ears exactly, more like inside the space itself. A slow inhale followed by a pause, then a soft exhale. I turned my head slightly. The hallway lights flickered, and in that flicker, I saw something shift at the end of the corridor. A shadow, small, still, gone before I could focus on it. My heart rate picked up. I checked my oxygen gauge again out of habit. Still stable, but I wasn't sure what system I was even connected to anymore. I moved forward again. Slow, careful. Then I heard it. A sound I knew too well from the surface reports. Children laughing. Soft, not loud, not chaotic, just close, like they were standing right behind the walls. I stopped immediately. My body went cold, because that sound had no place here. No air system, no living environment, no oxygen flow for human life. And yet it continued. Two voices, maybe three, layered slightly out of sync, like they were laughing at different times, but in the same space. I turned slightly toward one of the doors. Ward B. It was half open. I stepped closer without fully deciding to. My flashlight beam slipped inside, and I saw beds. Again, perfect rows, white sheets, neatly folded corners, like someone was maintaining them. But there was something different now, something I didn't notice in Ward 6. The beds here had breathing marks, not visible at first glance, but when my light hit the fabric just right, I saw faint rises. Slow, subtle, like something underneath the sheets was inhaling. I froze. One of the beds moved slightly, not violently, just a shift, like someone had turned their head under the sheet. The laughter outside grew a little louder, still calm, still soft, but now closer. I took a step back from the doorway, and that's when I realized something worse. The hallway behind me had changed. It wasn't just longer now. It felt narrower, walls slightly closer, like the corridor was adjusting itself around my movement. I turned fully around. Nothing behind me, only the empty stretch of hallway. But I could feel it. Pressure, like I was being guided. Not pushed, guided, forward. My comms suddenly crackled. Static, then a voice. Faint. Malik. Lena, do you copy? His voice sounded broken, delayed, like it was coming through layers of distance that shouldn't exist. I grabbed the mic instantly. Yes, I'm here. I'm inside something. I don't know what this is. Silence. Then, we're reading your signal, but your location keeps shifting. I looked down at my wrist display. It flickered once, then showed something new. Not depth, not coordinates, just one word. Inside. My chest tightened. What does that mean? I whispered. No response, only static. Then the comms cut again, like something had pulled the signal away. I exhaled slowly, and that's when I heard it again. The breathing. But now it wasn't just the building. It was closer, behind me. I turned instantly. Nothing, but I felt it, very clearly now. Someone had just exhaled near my shoulder. Warm, even through the suit. Impossible warmth. I stepped forward fast. Too fast. My boots hit the floor harder than before. The sound echoed down the corridor, and the echo came back slightly delayed, like something else was walking with me. I stopped again. The laughter changed, just slightly. It wasn't random anymore. It was reacting to my movement. I looked down the hallway and saw something I didn't notice before. Scratch marks on the wall, fresh, dragging downward, like something had been pulled along the surface. I followed them slowly. Each mark led deeper into the corridor, toward a door at the end. A single door, different from the rest, thicker, metal reinforced, with a small window at eye level. I moved closer, step by step. The laughter faded slightly, replaced by silence, heavy silence, like everything was watching me reach it. When I got close enough, I saw the glass. It was fogged from the inside, not outside, inside. My breath stopped, because that meant something inside was breathing against it. I leaned closer carefully, and wiped the glass slightly with my glove. At first, nothing, just darkness. Then slowly shapes formed. Children, sitting, watching me, not moving, but aware. All of them facing the door, waiting. Then one of them tilted their head slightly and smiled. My stomach dropped instantly because I recognized her. Nor-A. Again. Always Nor-A. She raised her hand slowly and pressed it against the glass. From inside, my calm suddenly came back for half a second. Just enough for one broken line. Malik's voice. Lena, that structure doesn't exist in any map. Get out. Cut. Silence again. The room inside the door shifted slightly. Not physically, emotionally. Like the space itself had noticed my presence more clearly now. The children inside started to laugh again, but softer this time, more personal, like they knew me, like they were remembering me. I stepped back instinctively, and that's when I noticed something on the door frame. A small metal plate, half rusted, barely readable. I leaned closer, wiping it slightly, and read it slowly. Respiration ward. My breath slowed, because I finally understood the contradiction. This wasn't just a submerged asylum. This wasn't just a structure underwater. This place didn't need air from the outside. It was generating its own breathing space for something inside it. And then I heard it, right behind the door. A whisper, soft, patient. We saved air for you. The lights in the corridor flickered once more, and when they stabilized, the door was slightly open. The first doll drifted past me like it knew where I was supposed to go. I didn't touch it. I didn't even breathe properly when I saw it. It just floated there in the water-filled corridor, slowly turning in place, one glassy eye staring straight through my mask. Then it pointed, not randomly, not by chance. Its small plastic arm lifted and aimed down the hallway, toward a door I hadn't noticed before. My body froze, because I understood something immediately. This wasn't debris. It was placement. Intentional. I turned my flashlight slightly, and the beam caught more shapes in the water. At first, I thought it was sediment, but then they moved. Slowly, too slowly. Dolls. Old ones. Broken ones. Floating through the corridor like they were suspended on invisible threads. Some had cracked faces. Some had missing eyes. Some still had hair drifting gently like seaweed. But every single one of them faced the same direction. Forward, toward the end of the hall. Toward that door. I felt my stomach tighten, because I didn't remember seeing this corridor before. Not like this. When I entered this submerged structure, it was empty walls, sealed rooms, rusted metal. But now, it looked occupied, not by people, by memory, or something pretending to be memory. My comm stayed dead. No surface signal, no Malik, no instructions, just the sound of my own breathing inside the helmet. And something else now. A faint tapping, soft, rhythmic, coming from inside the water. I moved closer to one of the dolls slowly. It was a small girl doll. Worn dress, faded blue paint on its cheeks, and its arm was extended, pointing. I followed the direction of its hand. The hallway stretched forward longer than before. Impossible length. And at the far end, a door, metal, thicker than the others, completely sealed. No window, just a heavy lock mechanism covered in rust. And above it, a sign, barely readable. Observation room. My chest tightened slightly. Observation room underwater didn't make sense. Who would observe anything here? There were no systems, no life support, no visibility beyond structural collapse zones. And yet, the dolls were all pointing toward it. I looked around again. More dolls now, closer than before. They weren't drifting randomly. They were guiding, like a slow current was carrying them in a deliberate pattern. I moved forward, carefully. Each step in the water felt heavier now. Not physically heavier, emotionally, like something was pressing against my decisions. One doll brushed against my arm. I flinched instantly. It was cold, colder than the water around it. And when I turned my light to it, its head slowly rotated toward me. Just slightly. Not enough to feel alive, but enough to feel aware. I pulled back instinctively, and that's when I heard it. A sound, not from my suit, not from outside, from the hallway itself. Soft singing, a child's voice, broken, slow, like a lullaby remembered incorrectly. I stopped moving completely. The dolls stopped too, not physically, but something about them felt still now, like they were listening with me. The singing grew clearer, and it was coming from the observation room. I felt a strange pull in my chest. Not fear exactly. Something worse. Recognition. Like I had heard that tune before, but forgotten where. I moved forward again. One step, then another. The dolls shifted slightly as I passed them. Always pointing. Always guiding. Never touching. Just watching. The observation room door came closer, and I noticed something strange. The lock wasn't rusted like the others. It was recently used. Scratches around it. Fresh metal marks. Someone had tried to open it. Recently. My flashlight flickered once, and in that flicker, I saw something inside the water behind me. A silhouette, standing still, child-sized, but when I turned fast, nothing was there. Only drifting dolls. Only silence. I turned back, focused on the door, because I didn't want to think about what I just saw. I reached it slowly. The singing stopped the moment I got close. Complete silence followed. Heavy, pressing, like the entire hallway was holding its breath with me. I placed my hand on the lock. It was warm. That shouldn't have been possible. Metal underwater doesn't hold heat. But this did. I hesitated. For the first time since I entered this structure. I hesitated. Then I turned the lock. It didn't resist. It clicked open like it had been waiting for me. The door slowly shifted inward. Water pressure changed instantly. But instead of rushing in, nothing happened. No flood. No collapse. Just stillness. I pushed the door open further and stepped inside. The room was dry. That was the first impossible thing. Completely dry. Like the water outside couldn't enter at all. I looked down at my suit. Still wet. Dripping. But the floor beneath me was clean. White tiles. Soft lighting. Observation equipment lined the walls. Old monitors. Broken screens. And in the center of the room, a single chair, facing a large glass window. Behind that glass, the hallway I just came through. I stepped forward slowly, My breath became uneven because I realized something immediately. This room wasn't observing the hallway. It was observing me. I turned slightly and saw something on one of the monitors. Static at first, then an image forming. A child's face. Nora, but she wasn't inside a bed this time. She was sitting in the chair, in the observation room, smiling faintly. I stepped back instantly. My heart rate spiked because I was standing right there, and she was also there, in the same space, but not the same way. The monitor flickered again, and now there were more faces. All the children, the dolls, the hallway, all layered into the screen, like they were not separate things, but one system, one memory, one loop. My comms suddenly crackled for half a second. Malik's voice broke through. Lena, don't let them assign you. Cut again. Silence. The monitors all turned on at once. Every screen, every broken panel, lighting up the room with flickering images. And every single one showed the same thing. Me, standing in the observation room, looking at myself from different angles, different moments, like the system had already recorded what I was going to do. My throat tightened. I backed toward the door instinctively. But when I turned, the observation room door was gone. Only a wall remained. Smooth, sealed, no exit, no handle, just white surface, like it had never opened at all. Behind me, the chair creaked. I turned slowly. It was now slightly closer, just a few inches forward. I hadn't touched it, but it moved anyway. And on the seat, a single doll sat there, same as the hallway ones. Its arms slowly lifted, pointing at me. I stepped back again, and the monitors all switched at once, now showing a new message. Simple text. Observation complete. My breathing stopped. The dolls in the screens all turned their heads toward me at the same time. And in the silence that followed, I finally understood. The observation room wasn't built to watch the hallway. It was built to decide who becomes part of it next. And as the chair slowly turned toward me on its own, the lights dimmed it just slightly, like the system was preparing a final recording. The recording didn't start when I turned it on. It was already running. That was the first thing I noticed. No power-up sound. No system check. Just a soft voice coming through my helmet speaker, like it had been waiting for me to listen. 10. I froze instantly, because there shouldn't have been any signal left in this place. No network, no comms, nothing, and yet the voice continued. 10-9. I pulled the waterproof recorder closer to my chest. It was old, rusted on the edges, half buried in silt near the observation room floor. I almost didn't pick it up, but something about it felt active, like it wasn't abandoned, like it was still being used. The countdown continued. 10-9-8. I looked around the observation room slowly. The monitors were still on, static shifting into faint images. My own reflection layered over and over again. But the sound wasn't coming from the room. It was coming from the device in my hand. 7-6. My fingers tightened around it, because I realized something strange. The voice didn't sound recorded. It sounded present, like the children were counting right now. Not in the past, not in memory, but in real time. I pressed the stop button. Nothing happened. The counting continued anyway. 5, 4. My breath slowed. I tried again. Harder this time. Still nothing. The device didn't respond. It didn't even flicker. It just kept playing. Like it had no off state. Like it wasn't a recording at all. 3. My chest tightened slightly. I looked toward the chair in the center of the room. It was still facing me. Still slightly closer than before. The doll sitting on it hadn't moved. But now I noticed something new. Its head was tilted. Slightly. Like it was listening too. 2. I stepped back slowly. The monitors around me flickered at the same time. Not randomly. Synchronized. All showing the same image now. A hallway. Underwater. The corridor I came from. But now it looked different. The dolls were no longer floating. They were standing. Aligned along the walls. Facing forward. All pointing toward something unseen. 1. I held my breath. Waiting for silence. Waiting for the loop to break. But it didn't. Instead. 10. My stomach dropped instantly. I stared at the recorder in my hand. It had restarted. From the beginning. The same voice. The same tone. No pause. No gap. Just the loop continuing like nothing had happened. 10-9. I turned the device over in my hands quickly. There was no display. No screen. Just a cracked speaker grill and a single red light that wasn't there before. Blinking slowly. I didn't install that light. I was sure of it. I pressed the stop button again. Harder. My glove slipped slightly. Still nothing. The counting continued. 8-7. My breathing became uneven now. I looked at the monitors again. And this time, something changed. The hallway view was closer. Like the camera had moved forward. But there was no camera system in this facility. At least not that I had seen. And then I saw it. A new angle. My angle. From behind me. The observation room camera was now showing me standing in the center of the room. Holding the recorder. Watching myself. I stepped back instinctively. 6-5. The voice continued without pause. But now I noticed something worse. The counting wasn't just repeating. It was learning. Each restart sounded slightly different. Smoother. More synchronized. Like all the voices were slowly merging into one. 4. I felt a pressure in my chest. Not fear exactly. Something heavier. Recognition again. Like I had heard this before. Not just today. Not just in this place. Somewhere deeper. 3. The doll in the chair moved its head slightly again. More than before. Now it was clearly facing me. Not the monitors. Me. 2. I stepped back again. My boot hit something on the floor. I looked down quickly. Another recorder. Same model. Same rust. I picked it up instinctively. My hands were shaking now. 10. The moment I touched it. It started playing too. A second voice. Same countdown. But slightly delayed. Out of sync. 10-9. Now there were 2 recordings. Overlapping. Layering. My head turned sharply. The monitors flickered again. And now the hallway wasn't empty anymore. More dolls. Closer. Facing forward. All pointing toward the observation room. Toward me. 8-7. I dropped one of the recorders. It hit the floor with a dull sound. But the voice didn't stop. It just kept playing from the one still in my hand. And now I realized something worse. It wasn't playing from the device anymore. It was coming from the room itself. From the walls. From the monitors. From inside the air. Every surface carried the same countdown. All slightly out of sync. All restarting at different times. Like the entire structure was repeating the same moment over and over in fragments. 6-5. My breathing sped up. I turned toward the door behind me. The one that should have been gone. It was back. Closed. Sealed. Like it had never disappeared. 4. I walked toward it fast. Too fast. My hand hit the handle. Locked. Of course. I pulled harder. Nothing. Behind me. 3. The chair creaked again. I turned slightly. The dial was gone. My heart dropped, because now the chair was empty, but still warm, like something had just stood up from it. 2. I slammed my shoulder against the door. Once, twice, the sound echoed strangely, like the door was deeper than it looked. Not physical, layered, one. Everything stopped. Instant silence. No countdown. No voices. No static. I froze. My hand still on the door. Waiting. Nothing moved. For a full second, maybe 2. Then, 10. My entire body went cold. I turned around slowly. The observation room was exactly the same. But now every monitor showed only one thing. A single image. Me, standing, not moving. But in the image, I wasn't alone. Behind me, the dolls were closer. Closer than before. And in the reflection of the glass wall, I saw something standing directly behind me. Small, still, breathing. I didn't turn fully. I couldn't. 9-8. The countdown continued again. But now it wasn't just sound. It was pressure. Like the room itself was collapsing the numbers around me. 7. I slowly lifted my recorder. The red light was no longer blinking. It was steady, bright, like it had stabilized, like it had found something. 6. I realized something then. The recording wasn't documenting time. It was creating it, looping it, resetting it, keeping something alive inside the cycle. 5. My hand shook harder now, because I understood the real horror. I wasn't listening to a recording. I was inside it. 4. The chair creaked again behind me. Closer this time. 3. I didn't turn, but I felt it. Right behind my shoulder now. Breathing, matching the rhythm of the countdown. 2. My fingers tightened around the recorder. And for the first time, I thought about letting it finish, just to see what happens after 0. 1. Silence. Complete. Heavy. And then, 10. The loop restarted again. But this time, it wasn't from the device anymore. It was from me. It started with a glow under the water that should not have been there. Soft at first, like moonlight breaking through mud. Then it flickered. Once, twice, and the lake above me changed. I was still inside the submerged asylum corridor when I noticed it. The water outside the windows was no longer dark. It was glowing, not from my lights, not from any equipment, from inside the structure itself. I moved closer to one of the tall observation windows. My breath slowed without me meaning it to, because beyond the glass, there was movement. Lights, not random flashes, not electrical failure, but steady walking light, like lanterns moving through corridors. I pressed my hand against the glass slowly. It was cold, too cold, and on the other side, a hallway lit up. Clean, dry, different from the submerged structure I was inside. People were walking there. At least they looked like people. Slow steps, hospital gowns, bare feet, no sound, just movement. I froze instantly, because this hallway didn't belong to the underwater facility I had entered. It looked older, more intact, like the asylum in its original state. Before water, before collapse, before time, one of the figures stopped, turned, looked directly at me. A child, Nora. Again, always her. She raised her hand slowly and pointed, not at me, but behind me. I turned instantly. Nothing there, only darkness and drifting dust inside the water. When I turned back, the hallway beyond the glass had changed again. Now there were more lights, more figures, walking in groups, like a shift change, like a hospital still running, still active, still alive, but impossible. My comms crackled weakly. Malik's voice broke through again, barely stable. Lena, surface sensors are picking up movement inside the structure, but it's impossible. There's no power source down there. I didn't answer immediately, because I was watching the windows, and the windows were watching me back. I'm seeing them, I finally whispered. A long pause. Then, seeing who? I didn't know how to answer that, because I wasn't sure anymore. Patients, children, or something pretending to be both. The light outside shifted again, this time brighter, like someone had opened a door in the other world. And I saw something worse. The figures weren't just walking anymore. They were interacting. One stopped to adjust a blanket on an invisible bed. Another wrote something on a wall. A child sat down in the corridor like it was a classroom. All of them behaving like the asylum was still functioning normally. But I knew the truth. There was no air, no power, no life support, only water, only pressure, only silence. And yet there was a full hospital running in front of me. I stepped back slowly. My boots hit something in the water behind me. A soft bump. I turned my flashlight down. A doll, floating, face up. But this one was different. Its eyes were closed. Not broken. Not missing. Closed. Like it was sleeping. And then it opened its eyes. I flinched backward instantly. My breathing spiked. But the doll didn't move. It just stared upward toward the glass windows, like it was watching the same thing I was. The light outside flickered again, and suddenly the hallway changed direction. Now it was not just one corridor. It expanded. New corridors appeared where walls should have been. Doors opened into rooms I had never seen before. The asylum was growing, or revealing itself. I couldn't tell anymore. My comms crackled again, this time weaker. Lena, your depth readings are fluctuating. The structure is not stable. I cut in quickly. It's not unstable, it's changing. Silence. Then Malik slower. What do you mean changing? I looked back at the glass, and I saw something I didn't want to see. A reflection. Not mine. A group of reflections behind me. Standing in the hallway I was supposed to be alone in. Children. Watching. Waiting. I turned instantly. Nothing there. Only water. Only floating dolls. But I felt it now. I wasn't alone. Not even for a second. The light outside grew brighter, and now I could see deeper into the asylum. Further corridors revealed themselves, each one filled with movement. Soft, controlled, like a hospital performing its daily routine. But wrong, always wrong, because everything was too quiet, too perfect, too continuous, like a memory being replayed without decay. Then I saw something new. A nurse, standing in the corridor outside. Perfect posture, old uniform, face blurred slightly by the glass distortion. She turned slowly toward me and raised her hand, not pointing, waving, like she recognized me. My stomach tightened instantly, because I knew I had never seen her before. But she acted like she had seen me many times. The light flickered again, and now the entire asylum beyond the glass was visible. Hundreds of moving figures, all going about routines. Walking, sitting, writing, sleeping, but none of them noticed each other. Only me. Only my presence, like I was the only interruption in their loop. My breathing grew heavier. I stepped back again, but the corridor behind me felt different now. Longer, like it had stretched while I wasn't looking. The dolls floated closer, always facing the windows, always watching the other side. Then I heard it, a sound I didn't expect. Footsteps. Behind me. Slow. Soft. Inside the water. I turned slightly. Nothing. But the footsteps continued, matching my movement, not following exactly. Mirroring. I looked back at the glass quickly, and the nurse was gone. The hallway outside was empty now. Completely empty. No figures, no lights, just darkness. I felt a sharp drop in my stomach, because silence like that always meant something had just left. Not disappeared. Left. My comms suddenly spiked again. Malik's voice came through stronger this time. Lena, surface crew is seeing lights in the lake above you. Multiple witnesses are reporting movement inside the water. They think there are people down there. I didn't answer immediately, because I knew what I was seeing wasn't just inside. It was visible from outside too. The asylum wasn't hidden anymore. It was leaking into the world above. I looked through the glass again, and now I saw something different. The hospital hallway wasn't empty again, but instead of patients, it showed silhouettes of people standing at windows, looking out at me from the other side. And in one of those silhouettes, I saw myself, standing still, watching. My breath stopped, because I realized something I didn't want to accept. There were multiple versions of me inside this structure. Or maybe I was already part of what they were seeing. The lights flickered one last time, and everything outside the glass froze. Every figure stopped moving. Every corridor went silent. Every light held steady. And then slowly, all of them turned their heads in unison. Toward me. The dolls in the water drifted closer, pointing again, not toward the windows this time, But behind me, I didn't turn. I couldn't, because I already knew what I would see. The asylum wasn't separated by glass anymore. It had aligned itself with my side, and as the last flicker of light stabilized, I understood the worst part. The hospital wasn't underwater. It was deciding who gets to see which side next. I didn't believe in impossible patience until I read the last entry. The journal was already open when I found it. No lock, no archive tag, just a damp leather book sitting on a steel table in the basement of the old psychiatric wing. And the moment I touched it, the air changed. Not colder, not warmer, just heavier, like the room was remembering something it didn't want to remember. The first line was written in shaky handwriting. I stopped reporting new admissions after midnight. I paused, looked around the room. Empty shelves, broken filing cabinets, a flickering emergency light that shouldn't still have power. Nothing moved. Still, I felt watched. I kept reading. I know what the charts say. No one is admitted at night. The gates are locked. The records are sealed, but they still arrive. My throat tightened slightly, because this wasn't a story. It was structured like a report, like someone trying very hard not to sound insane. I turned the page slowly. The paper stuck to my glove for half a second, then released. Next entry. Patient appears in Ward C at 12:07 a.m. No entry log, no escort record. Nurses deny seeing transport. I stopped again. Ward C was on the floor above me. At least it used to be. Now it was condemned. I should have left the journal right there. But I didn't. I kept reading. That's the part I still don't understand. Why I kept reading. Another entry. I asked her name. She said she forgot it during the day. I felt a strange pressure in my chest. Not fear yet. Something closer to recognition. Like a dream I had almost remembered. The writing continued. She only speaks clearly after midnight. During the day, she is nonverbal. Charts show no neurological condition that explains this. I looked up again. The basement hallway stretched behind me. Long, unlit, but I swear I heard something at the far end. A soft scrape, like fabric moving against concrete. I froze. Nothing followed. Just silence again. I forced myself to continue reading. The next page was darker. Smudged ink, like the writer's hand had been shaking harder. New patient in isolation room. No file exists. Staff insists room has always been empty. I stopped, because I knew that kind of statement didn't belong in any medical record. That was fear leaking through professional language. And then I read the line that changed everything. She asks me why I only remember her at night too. My hand went cold. I looked at the page again. Read it twice. 3 times. No change. Same sentence. Same ink. Same impossible claim. I whispered without thinking. That doesn't make sense. But even as I said it, I felt something inside me hesitate. Like part of me didn't fully reject it. Like part of me was unsure. I turned the page quickly. The next entry was shorter. I checked all admission logs. No record exists of any of them. My breathing slowed, because now it wasn't just a strange report. It was an investigation. A system failing to explain itself. And the writer was losing control. Next line. They increase after midnight. 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, but only until sunrise. I stopped again. My mind tried to classify it. Hallucination. sleep deprivation, old asylum paranoia. But none of those explanations felt strong enough, because the writing didn't sound confused. It sounded observant, precise, afraid but still measuring. I turned another page. The paper felt slightly warmer now. That was the first physical impossibility I noticed. I tested cameras in Ward C. They show empty rooms, but I can hear children talking inside them. My stomach tightened. Children again. Always children. I looked at the basement door behind me. Still closed. Still silent. But the silence now felt layered, like something was listening through it. I continued reading. The staff report nothing unusual, but they refused to enter after 11:50 p.m. That detail stuck with me, because fear doesn't usually organize itself into exact times. But this did. Precise times, precise behavior, like a schedule, like routine. The next entry was underlined 3 times. I stayed after midnight. My fingers paused on the edge of the page. Something in my chest tightened instinctively, because that sentence didn't feel like information. It felt like a mistake, a crossing point. The journal continued. I wanted to prove it was sleep deprivation, hallucination, shared delusion, anything logical. I could almost hear the writer now. Calm, professional, trying to stay rational. Even as it failed, I locked myself in observation room 3. I swallowed. The basement light flickered once. Just once. Then stabilized. No change. But I noticed it. Still, I waited. A new page crease appeared at the bottom, like the writer had pressed harder there. 11:59 p.m., nothing. I felt a small release in my chest. Just a little. Like relief was possible. Then the next line shattered it. 12:00 a.m. The patient was already inside. My body went still. I stopped breathing for a second, then forced air back in. I looked around again. The basement felt different now. Not physically changed, but conceptually, like the idea of empty had become uncertain. I continued reading. My security log shows no entry. My door never opened, but she was sitting across from me. I felt my grip tighten on the journal, because now I understood what this was becoming. Not a haunting, not a mystery, a violation of physical rules. Next line. She asked if I was her doctor again. My throat felt dry. I told her I was. A pause in the writing. A long one. Then, she smiled like she expected that answer. I stopped, because that was the first emotional description in the journal. Not fear, not confusion, expectation, like the patient already knew the outcome. The next page was harder to read. The ink was darker, pressed in uneven strokes. She said doctors only remember her after midnight. My heart rate increased slightly, and forget her before sunrise. I froze. Read it again, slowly, then again, because something about that didn't feel like a symptom. It felt like a rule, a condition of reality inside this place. I whispered without realizing, "That's not possible." But even as I said it, I couldn't fully believe it anymore. The journal continued. I reviewed my own notes. I found entries I don't remember writing. My hands stiffened. That sentence hit differently, because it wasn't about patience anymore. It was about identity, continuity, memory itself breaking. I wrote about her before I met her. I felt a strange dizziness. Not physical, mental, like the concept of time was slipping slightly off alignment. The basement light flickered again, this time longer. 2 seconds, then returned. I didn't look up immediately. I kept reading. She is not admitted, she is observed. My breathing slowed again. An observation changes nothing. A final page was attached loosely at the back, not bound properly, like it had been added later. The handwriting here was worse, more urgent, almost broken. If you are reading this before midnight, leave. I stopped, completely. The silence around me felt heavier now. Not quiet, waiting. The next line was worse. If you are reading this after midnight, she already knows you. My stomach dropped. I looked at the basement door again. Still closed. But now I felt something I hadn't felt before. Not sound. Not movement. Attention. Like something had finally noticed I was paying attention to the journal. The final line was written in larger letters. Shaking. Almost carved into the page. Do not ask to see Wardsey. My fingers went cold, because I had already been thinking about it, before I even knew I was. I closed the journal slowly, and that's when I noticed something I didn't see before. A page I hadn't read yet, stuck slightly between the last 2 entries, not fully attached. I shouldn't have opened it. I know that now, but I did, and on it was a single sentence. Fresh ink, still wet. You are already on tonight's list. The basement light went out. The first time I checked the schedule, there was nothing there. No appointments, no patients, just a blank therapy log at 3:00 a.m. And yet, I was already walking toward the office. I don't remember deciding to go. That's the strange part. It felt like I had already agreed to it earlier, even though I couldn't find the moment I said yes. The hallway outside the psychiatric wing was dark, but not empty. Not fully. There's a difference. Empty means nothing is there. This felt like something was holding its breath inside the walls. My footsteps sounded too loud, too clean, like the building was listening to each one and measuring them. When I reached the therapy room door, it was slightly open. Just a crack. I didn't touch it. It opened wider on its own. Inside, the room was lit. Soft yellow light. Calm. Too calm for a place that should be shut down at this hour. A single chair faced the couch. A standard setup. But the couch already had someone sitting on it. A child. Small. Bare feet swinging slightly above the floor. I stopped instantly, because I knew I hadn't opened the door long enough for anyone to enter. And I knew I didn't hear anyone walk in. The child looked up at me. Nora. Again. Same face. Same quiet expression. But something was different tonight. She wasn't smiling. She looked tired, like she had been waiting a long time. I checked the log sheet on the table. My hands froze. It was already filled out. My handwriting. I stared at it longer than I should have. Patient Nora. Time 3:00 a.m. Reason: recurrent memory fragmentation during daylight hours. I stepped back slightly. My throat went dry, because I didn't remember writing that at all. I looked up again. She was still there, watching me, not moving, just patient, like she knew I would look at the paper first. My comms device on my wrist flickered weakly. Static, then nothing. No outside signal. No confirmation I was even in contact with reality anymore. I forced myself to speak. Did you come in alone? My voice sounded wrong in the room. Too loud. She didn't answer immediately. Then she nodded. Once, slow, like she was choosing the simplest possible version of truth. I sat down across from her, not because I wanted to, because standing felt worse. The chair felt slightly warm when I touched it. That detail bothered me more than anything else. I opened her file. It was empty, blank pages, except for one line at the top. Do not read out loud after midnight. I closed it immediately. Too fast. She tilted her head slightly, like she noticed my reaction, like she understood what was written without seeing it. I don't remember you during the day, she said softly. My fingers tightened. That's not possible, I said automatically. But even as I said it, I wasn't sure why I was so confident. She looked at me carefully. I don't remember you during the day either. Silence filled the room. Not empty silence. Waiting silence. The kind that feels like something is about to interrupt it, but hasn't decided how yet. I checked the wall clock. 3:00 a.m. exactly. No movement. No ticking. Just a frozen time display. That was the first real sign. Something was wrong with time itself. I tried to reset the situation. Routine helps. It always helps in clinical settings. What do you remember before coming here? I asked. She thought for a moment, then said, lights turning off. I waited. That's it. She nodded again. I wrote it down, even though I didn't want to. My pen moved slower than usual, like the ink was resisting. Then she spoke again. But I remember more when you ask me questions. I paused, looked up slowly. What does that mean? She blinked once, and for a second, her eyes looked older. Not physically older, but heavier, like she was carrying memory instead of age. I forget during the day, she said, but when someone asks me at night, I remember again. My throat tightened. That wasn't a symptom. That was a mechanism. A rule. Like she existed differently depending on interaction. I leaned forward slightly, trying to stay professional. Do you feel pain? She shook her head. No. Then she added, only when no one is here. That sentence stayed in the air longer than it should have. I wrote it down without thinking. My handwriting was shaky now. I noticed that. I didn't like it. A soft knock came from the door. I turned instantly, but it wasn't a normal knock. It was inside the door, like something tapped from the other side of the wood. 3 soft taps, then silence. I looked back at the girl. She hadn't reacted, like she already knew it would happen. I stood up slowly, walked toward the door. My hand hovered over the handle, then stopped, because I realized something. There was no shadow under the door, no light leakage, nothing, just solid darkness. I didn't open it. When I turned back, she was closer, not walking, not moving visibly, just closer, now sitting at the edge of the chair opposite me. I stepped back instinctively. She looked down at the table. At night you remember us, she said quietly. I felt something cold in my chest. And during the day, I asked. She looked up. You don't. My breathing slowed. That's not how memory works, I said. She didn't argue. She just watched me. like she was waiting for me to understand instead of explaining. The lights flickered once, very briefly, and in that flicker, I saw something behind her. More chairs, more children, all sitting in the room. But when the light returned, only she remained. I swallowed hard, my voice lowered. How many sessions have we had? She tilted her head again. That depends on when you ask. That answer made no sense. And yet, it felt accurate in a way I couldn't explain. Like time wasn't linear here. Like it depended on attention, on awareness, on being observed. I opened her file again, against my better judgment. The blank pages were now filled. New writing, fresh ink, my handwriting again. But I hadn't written it. Patient becomes more stable when observed continuously. I stepped back. "What is this?" I whispered. She watched me calmly. "You wrote that." "I didn't." She didn't respond immediately. Then softly, "You will." My breathing changed. Faster now. I looked at the clock again. Still 3:00 a.m. No movement. Frozen. I reached for the door again. This time I opened it. The hallway outside was different. Longer than before. Lights dimmer. And at the far end, I saw silhouettes. Standing. Watching. But when I blinked, they were gone. I turned back quickly. The room was empty. No couch. No chair. No girl. Only a single patient file on the desk. Closed. Neatly placed. I walked toward it slowly. Opened it. Inside was a single page. One line. Written in my handwriting again. Next session, 3:00 a.m. And below it, a signature. Not mine, but identical. The door behind me clicked shut on its own, and the clock on the wall finally started ticking again. But not forward. Backward. The first time I noticed them, it wasn't in the room. It was in the mirror. I was washing my hands after the 3:00 a.m. session that never officially happened. Or maybe it did. I don't know anymore. The bathroom light was too bright for a place like this. Hospitals don't usually feel this clean at night. Clean places feel wrong when everything else feels broken. I looked up and saw a child behind me. In the mirror. Not in the room. Just the reflection. I turned instantly. Nothing. Empty bathroom. Just dripping sink water and my own breathing. But in the mirror, she was still there, sitting on the floor now, looking at me. That's when I understood the rule. They don't appear in reality, only in reflections. I stepped closer slowly, my hands still wet. The mirror fogged slightly as I leaned in. And she spoke, soft, clear. "Do you hear us yet?" My body froze, because her lips moved perfectly with the words. I turned again. Vast. Nothing behind me. Only tiles. Only silence. When I looked back, there were more reflections now. Not just the girl. More children, standing in different corners of the mirror space. Like the bathroom behind me had been replaced with something else entirely, but only inside the glass. I whispered without thinking, "What are you?" The girl tilted her head. "That depends on when you look at us." My throat tightened. That sentence again. The same structure as before. Time behaving differently depending on observation. I stepped back. The mirror followed me. Not physically, but visually. The reflection stayed close. Too close. One of the children moved forward, not walking in reality, just in reflection, and repeated the same question. Do you hear us yet? Then another. Do you hear us yet? Then another. The voices layered, soft, patient, like a group rehearsing the same line for something I hadn't agreed to attend. I turned the tap on. Cold water. Real. Grounded. I needed something real. But when I looked up again, the sink was gone in the mirror. In its place was a hospital hallway. Ward C. I recognized it instantly, even though I had never been inside. At least I think I hadn't. In the reflection, the hallway lights flickered. Children stood along the walls, not moving, just watching, all of them facing the mirror, facing me. I stepped closer without meaning to. My reflection didn't move at the same speed. It lagged, just slightly, then caught up too fast. That shouldn't happen. Physics doesn't do that. I pressed my palm against the glass. Cold, solid, but on the other side. A hand pressed back. Small, soft, exact match. I pulled my hand away immediately. The reflection didn't. It stayed, waiting. The girl in the mirror spoke again. We've been talking to you for a long time. My mouth went dry. I would remember that, I said. She smiled slightly. You do, just not when you are here. I didn't understand that, and I hated that I almost did. Behind her in the reflection, more figures appeared. Doctors, nurses, all standing in the hallway, but their faces were blurred, like the mirror refused to fully render them. One of them stepped forward, slow, professional posture, then spoke directly toward me. Not the girl. Me. Do you hear us yet? I stepped back again. My heel hit the bathroom door. Closed. I didn't remember closing it. I turned. Locked. When I looked back at the mirror, the hallway was closer, like it had moved forward inside the glass. The boundaries shrinking. The children were now pressed against the glass side of their world. Watching. Waiting. The girl spoke again. You ask us questions during the night. My chest tightened. And what do I ask? I whispered. She didn't answer immediately. Then, why you forget us during the day? My stomach dropped, because that sounded too familiar, too clinical, like something I had read before, or written. I shook my head slightly. No, that's not possible. The reflection tilted its head. Then why do you write it down? My breath stopped. I looked down instinctively. My coat pocket. There was a folded paper inside. I didn't remember putting anything there. My hands shook as I pulled it out. It was a patient note. My handwriting. Again, but I had no memory of writing it. I unfolded it slowly. Only one line. Mirror sessions are the only stable communication window. I felt my throat tighten. Behind me in the mirror, the hallway lights flickered again. The children all moved one step closer, still inside the glass, but closer, always closer. The doctor figure spoke again. Do you hear us yet? But now the voice was layered. Not just one, many, all speaking together. Calm, controlled, like a unified system. I stepped away from the mirror. Vast, but my reflection stayed in place for a second too long. Then followed, too smoothly, too correctly, like it was correcting my movement. I backed toward the bathroom door. My hand reached for the handle. Locked, still locked. Behind me, the mirror darkened slightly. Like the hallway inside, it was losing power. Or preparing something. The girl stepped forward in the reflection, until she was almost touching the glass. Her face was closer now. More detailed. Too detailed. She whispered again, "We only appear when you are alone." I froze. "And when are we alone?" I asked quietly. She smiled. "When you stop being observed." That sentence hit differently, because I suddenly remembered something. The journal, the sessions, the observation rooms. Everything I had read before felt connected now. Observation wasn't protection. It was suppression. The mirror flickered. Just once. And in that flicker, I saw the same hallway behind me. Not in reflection, but faintly in reality. Just for a second. Ward C. Right behind the bathroom wall. Impossible. I turned instantly. Nothing. But my reflection didn't turn with me. It stayed facing forward, watching me instead of mirroring me. That was the first time I felt real fear. Not confusion, not curiosity, but separation. Like my reflection had started making decisions without me. It spoke softly. "Do you hear us yet?" I whispered back without thinking. "Yes." And everything in the mirror stopped moving. Instantly, complete silence inside the glass world. The children froze. The doctors froze. Even the flickering lights stopped mid-glitch. Then the girl smiled wider. Like that was the correct answer. The reflection leaned closer to the glass and said something new. Not a question, a confirmation. "Good, now you can stay longer." The bathroom lights flickered in reality. Once, twice, then steadied. But my reflection didn't flicker. It stayed still, waiting. I stepped forward slightly, and it stepped forward too. But this time, it was ahead of me by half a second. I realized then that I wasn't looking at a reflection anymore. I was looking at a version of me that had already answered the question. From the other side. And it knew something I hadn't yet remembered. As I backed away slowly from the mirror, my reflection stayed right where it was, and softly asked again, almost kindly, "Do you hear us yet?" But this time, it wasn't asking me. It was asking someone behind me. The last page wasn't the end. That was the problem. It had two endings. Two different versions of the same final entry, written in the same handwriting. Same ink, same date, same pressure in the pen strokes. But they did not agree. I sat alone in the archive room at 3:12 a.m., holding the journal like it was something alive. The air felt heavier than before, not dusty, not old. Wrong, like the building itself had leaned in to read what I was reading. The first version of the final entry said, "I have escaped the observation wing. They are still inside the system, but I am out. Normal enough." A conclusion, a survival note. But the second version was written directly beneath it. Same page, same line spacing, as if it had always been there. "I have stopped trying to escape. The system does not allow exits. I am now inside Ward 6. I read both lines again and again. My eyes started to burn, because neither felt like fiction. They felt like two outcomes competing for the same person. And both were true. or both were becoming true. I leaned back in my chair slowly. The archive monitor behind me flickered once. Just once. Then stabilized. But I didn't turn around. I didn't want to see what would change if I acknowledged it. Instead, I kept reading the journal. The pages before the final entry were worse now, because I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Certain entries were repeated, not copied, rewritten. Same events, slightly different outcomes. In one version, the doctor treated children at night. In another, he denied ever seeing them. In one version, the asylum was closed. In another, it was still operating. It wasn't just a journal anymore. It was multiple realities fighting for dominance on paper. And I was standing in the middle of the argument. My pen slipped from my hand onto the table. The sound felt too loud, like the building flinched. I picked it up slowly, then froze, because the ink on my fingers wasn't from the pen. It was already there. Dry, old, like I had been writing for longer than I remembered. I wiped my hand on my coat. It didn't come off. A soft sound came from the archive shelves behind me. Paper shifting. Not wind. Not settling. Movement. I didn't turn, but I knew. Something had changed again. The system was reacting to my reading. Or my awareness. Or both. I forced myself back to the journal. The second final entry felt heavier now, like it was closer than before. I am now inside Ward 6. I whispered it without meaning to. Ward 6. The same place from the earlier logs. The same place that didn't exist in the official hospital layout. Or at least wasn't supposed to. But the building I was sitting in had always felt bigger than the maps suggested. Like something was folded inside it. Waiting. A sudden thought hit me. If one version said he escaped, and the other said he became a patient, then both endings weren't separate. They were transitions, not choices, progressions. My chest tightened, because that meant the journal wasn't documenting what happened. It was documenting what was still happening. Behind me, the archive light flickered again. Longer this time. 3 seconds. I finally turned. Slow. The shelves were unchanged, but the distance between them felt wrong. Too deep. Like the room had stretched while I wasn't looking. The aisles between records seemed longer. Darker. More endless. I turned back to the journal quickly. My pulse rising now. The final entries were shifting slightly. Not rewriting. Rearranging. Like the page itself couldn't decide which version to keep. The ink on the escaped line looked lighter now. Fading. The Ward 6 line looked darker. More solid. I swallowed hard. And then I saw it. A third line. Not there before. Squeezed between them. I am still writing this. My breath stopped completely, because I hadn't seen anyone add that. And the handwriting was identical. Same doctor. Same pressure. Same fear in the strokes. But it didn't make sense. If he escaped, he wouldn't still be writing. If he became a patient, he wouldn't be documenting it. Unless I closed the journal slowly. My hands were shaking now. The archive room felt smaller again, like it was correcting itself, fixing itself around me. The monitor behind me beeped softly. Once, then displayed something it had never shown before. A patient file. No name. Just status active. Location archive room. Role observer. My stomach dropped. I didn't move. because the word observer felt too direct, too specific, like it wasn't describing a job. It was describing what I was doing to myself. The journal in my hands felt heavier now, almost warm. I opened it again against my will. The final page had changed again. Now both entries were merging, letters bleeding into each other, escaped and patient overlapping, until only one sentence remained readable. I am inside Ward 6 because I refuse to stop reading. My throat went dry. The archive lights dimmed slightly. Not off, just lower, like the building was conserving attention, or focusing. I stood up slowly. My chair scraped the floor too loudly again, and I realized something terrifying. Every sound I made felt delayed, like the room reacted after I did. Not with me, after me. I took one step back. The shelves responded. A soft shift, not physical movement, but alignment, like everything had recalculated my position. I whispered, "This is not real," but even that felt wrong, because the room didn't reject it. It accepted it, like it was already documented. The journal slipped slightly in my grip. A final page turned on its own, even though I wasn't touching it. And there was one last line. Fresh ink, still wet. I wrote you into this reading. I dropped the journal immediately. It hit the floor softly. Too softly. No echo. No impact. Just silence absorbing it. I backed toward the door. Slow. Careful. But the door handle felt further away than before. Not physically. Relationally. Like distance itself had changed meaning. Behind me, the archive shelves creaked again. A slow, unified sound, like multiple sections breathing at once. I didn't look back, but I felt it. Something in the room had become aware of me fully now. Not as a visitor, not as a reader, but as part of the document. My hand finally reached the door handle. Cold, real. I almost cried from relief. I turned it. Locked. Of course. It had never been unlocked. Not once. Not ever. But I remember entering. That was the worst part. I definitely remember entering. The lights flickered once more. Longer this time. And in that flicker, I saw someone sitting at the archive desk. Me. Reading. Still reading. And smiling slightly, like I had finally understood something important. The light stabilized. The chair behind me was now empty, but I was still standing, still holding the journal, still inside the room that shouldn't have had two versions of me. A soft sound came from the monitor. A new file opened automatically. No input, just generation. And the status changed. Status, observed becoming observer. The journal on the floor flipped open again by itself. And the last line was no longer about the doctor. It was about whoever reads it next. I'm still writing this, and now so are you. The archive room light dimmed one final step. And somewhere deep inside the building, something turned a page back. We shouldn't have been inside after midnight. But that's the thing about warnings. They only feel real after something answers them. The gate to Blackridge Asylum was already open when we arrived. Not broken, not forced, just waiting, like it had been unlocked for us specifically. Jace laughed behind me, low and excited. See, all that talk online, it's just a building. But I didn't like that, because buildings don't leave doors open for 20 years. And they definitely don't breathe. At least I thought they don't. The air near the entrance felt warmer than outside. Wrong kind of warm. Like stepping into a closed mouth. My flashlight hit the cracked sign. BLACKRIDGE Asylum. Closed 1998. Someone had scratched something underneath it. Fresh. I leaned closer. The words were simple. It RESETS after dark. Mia stepped in beside me, adjusting her camera. That's the viral post, right? People say it resets every night. I nodded slowly. Yeah, but no one agrees on what that means. Jace already walked inside. Of course he did. He always went first when it was stupid. The rest of us followed. The moment we crossed the threshold, my flashlight flickered once. Just once. But I noticed it. The hallway inside was too clean for abandonment. No dust pattern, no decay rhythm. Like someone had been maintaining it inconsistently. Every few steps felt slightly different from the last. Not in shape, in memory. Like the hallway wasn't sure how we had entered it. Mia whispered, "Does it feel newer than outside?" I didn't answer, because I was counting the doors. They didn't match the layout I had studied. There were more, or fewer. I couldn't tell which was worse. Jace's voice echoed ahead. "Guys, check this out." We followed him into a wide reception hall. And that's when I noticed the first real shift. The clack on the wall. It said 12:07 a.m. But I had checked my phone outside. 11:58 p.m. It hadn't even been 10 minutes. Mia frowned. "That clock is fast." Then it ticked and jumped back to 11:59. We all saw it. Nobody spoke for a second. Then Jace laughed again, but it was weaker now. Okay, old building electricity, whatever. But I wasn't looking at the clock anymore. I was looking at the walls. Because something was changing. Slowly, subtly, like the building was relearning how to exist around us. The paint pattern shifted slightly when I blinked. The hallway length adjusted when I turned my head. Not physically obvious, but my brain was catching mismatches. Reality lag. Mia raised her camera. "Let's document this before we go deeper." The camera screen turned on. Static, then clear, then static again. Then it showed something behind us. A hallway. Empty. But the angle was wrong. We were not standing where the camera said we were. Mia lowered it slowly. "That's not possible." Jace grabbed it and checked. "It's just glitching." But I saw his hand shaking slightly. We kept moving, because that's what explorers do when fear doesn't have a name yet. We reached Ward B. The sign above the door was freshly printed. Too fresh. Like it had been replaced today. I stopped. That wasn't here in the maps. Jace pushed the door anyway. Of course he did. Inside was a long corridor lined with patient rooms. All doors closed. All numbered. But something made my stomach drop immediately. The numbers were not sequential. They were repeating. 12, 12, 12. Like the hallway couldn't decide how many rooms it had. Mia whispered, "Why do they all say the same thing?" I moved closer to one door. There was a small window. Inside, darkness. But not empty darkness. Dense darkness. Like something was blocking light from the inside. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Inside the room. Slow. Measured. But the room had no lights. And no movement on the door handle. Jace leaned in. "Hello." The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then a soft knock came from inside. 3 taps. Perfect rhythm, like a response. Mia stepped back. We should not be here. Jace laughed again, but it cracked slightly. It's just acoustics, old building stuff. But then all the doors knocked. At the same time. 3 taps each. Every room. Every door. One synchronized response. Like the building had answered for all of them. I stepped back instinctively. My flashlight flickered again. And in that flicker, I saw something through the corridor. A person standing at the far end. Still, watching. But when the light stabilized, there was nothing there. Jace exhaled. Okay, that's weird. No one replied. Because we all felt it now. The sense that we were not exploring the building. We were being tested by it. Mia checked her camera again. It turned on. This time it worked. But the footage showed something different. We were already in the hallway. Not entering it. Already inside. I grabbed the camera from her. Scrolled back. Same result. Same hallway. Same position. Except in the recording. There were more of us. Not physically. Just slightly behind. Standing where we had been a few seconds earlier. I felt my throat tighten. We're out of sync, I said quietly. Jace frowned. What does that even mean? I didn't know how to explain it. But the building was behaving like time wasn't moving forward properly. It was looping, or correcting, or resetting. Then the lights dimmed. Not fully off, just lower. Like the building had decided to stop pretending it was normal electricity. And that's when we heard the announcement. A soft intercom voice, coming from nowhere, but everywhere. Visitors detected. We all froze. Mia whispered, "There's no power here." The voice continued, initiating night protocol. Jace backed away slowly. Okay, nope, that's not real. But the voice spoke again. Closer this time. Reset sequence beginning. The hallway lights flickered once, twice, and suddenly the doors all opened. Not violently, not dramatically, just unlocked, as if permission had been granted. We didn't move, because inside each room, there was something now, not fully visible, just shapes, standing, waiting, and then I realized something worse. They weren't inside the rooms anymore. They were behind the doors. On our side. Mia grabbed my arm. We need to leave now. But when we turned toward the exit, the hallway behind us was different. Longer, colder, and the entrance we came through was gone. Just gone. No wall damage. No collapse. Just absence. Like it had never existed. Jace whispered, "We didn't go that far in." But I already knew. We weren't inside the asylum anymore. We were inside the version of it that existed after midnight. The reset version. The one no map ever recorded. The intercom crackled again. First cycle confirmed. And then softer. New arrivals registered. Mia's camera screen flickered. And showed something I didn't want to understand. Us, standing at the entrance gate. Entering again. Looping. Like we had just started. Again. I looked at the hallway in front of us. And realized the worst part. We weren't being trapped. We were being replayed. The building wasn't holding us. It was rehearsing us. And somewhere deeper, inside Blackridge Asylum, something turned a page and waited for us to say our lines correctly this time. We should have reached the exit by now. That was the thought repeating in my head like a broken alarm. But every time we turned a corner, the corridor was longer. Not slightly longer, noticeably longer. Like the building was stretching away from us the moment we stopped looking directly at it. Mia noticed it first. She slowed down, pointing her flashlight ahead. "This hallway wasn't this big earlier," she whispered. Jace scoffed, but it didn't sound confident anymore. "It's the same hallway, we're just stressed." But even he wasn't walking in front anymore. That was new. I was. And I didn't remember deciding that. The floor tiles felt normal under my feet. Too normal. Like nothing around us was admitting the truth. But my eyes were, because I kept noticing small changes every time I blinked. A door that had been on the left, now slightly farther back. A crack in the wall that moved forward instead of staying still. A light flickering that lasted a little longer each time. The building wasn't changing all at once. It was updating itself, like a system patching reality in real time. Mia raised her camera again. Her hands were shaking now. "I'm recording everything. If this is some kind of hallucination or gas leak or..." She stopped mid-sentence, because the camera screen showed something none of us were seeing. A longer hallway than the one in front of us. Much longer. And at the end of it, a door we hadn't reached yet. Jace leaned in. "That's not possible. That's not the angle." But I saw it too. And the worst part, on the camera, we were already farther ahead than we actually were. Like the recording had skipped ahead in time. I swallowed hard. "We need to turn back," I said. Even as I said it, I knew how stupid that sounded. Because turning back should have been simple. We turned around. We did. But the hallway behind us was not the hallway we came from. It was identical. Same walls. Same lights. Same doors. But longer. Always longer. Mia whispered, "We're being moved." Jay snapped, "No one is moving us." But his voice cracked slightly on the last word. We walked faster. Then faster. Then almost running. The corridor kept stretching ahead like it was breathing. Every time we thought we reached a landmark, an old sign, a broken cart, a stained patch of ceiling, it appeared again further ahead. Like the building was copying itself and placing duplicates just out of reach. My breathing got louder. Not from fear at first. From confusion. Confusion is heavier than fear when it lasts too long. Mia suddenly stopped. "Wait." We stopped too. She pointed at the wall. There was a mark there. A scratch. Fresh. "I wrote this," she said. Jace frowned. "No, you didn't." But she stepped closer. "I did. I remember doing it. I marked the wall so we'd know if we were looping." She touched it, then pulled her hand back quickly, because the scratch wasn't hers. It was deeper now. Fresher. Like it had been redone recently. I felt something cold in my stomach, because I realized what that meant. The building wasn't just changing space. It was rewriting our actions after they happened. Jace suddenly laughed nervously. "This is insane. We're just walking in circles, that's all it is." But the problem was, we weren't circling. We were advancing. We just weren't getting anywhere. The hallway ahead flickered for a second. Just one. And in that flicker, I saw something new. A version of us. Far ahead. Walking. Exactly where we were supposed to be. But they weren't us from the future. They were us from earlier. Repeating. Looping forward. Mia saw it too. Her face went pale instantly. "No, no, no, no." She backed away slowly. The image vanished when the light stabilized. Jace grabbed her arm. "What did you see?" But she didn't answer. She just whispered, "We're not the first group." That changed everything in his face. Because up until now, he had believed we were special. That this was a one-time anomaly. Now it felt like we were part of a pattern. A long, repeating pattern. We started walking again, but slower. Careful now. Every step felt monitored. Like the building was watching how we moved through it. Then something happened that made all of us stop at once. A door opened on its own. Not ahead. Not behind. Beside us. Inside was a room we had already passed. But now it was open. And inside, there were footprints on the floor. Fresh. Leading out. Mia whispered, "We didn't go in there." I nodded slowly. "No, but something did." Jace shook his head. "That doesn't make sense." But none of this made sense anymore. We kept moving past it, trying to ignore it. But the corridor responded immediately. It stretched again, longer than before. Like the act of ignoring it made it worse. The air felt heavier now. Not physically, mentally. Like the building was compressing attention itself. Every time we focused on something, it became more real. Every time we ignored it, it became larger. Mia suddenly stopped walking again. Her voice was barely audible. "If we stop thinking about the exit, does it disappear?" No one answered. Because the question felt dangerous. Jace finally said, "That's not how space works." But he didn't sound sure anymore. I looked ahead again, and the corridor had changed shape slightly. Not length this time. Angle. It curved in a way it hadn't before. Like it was learning how to trap us more efficiently. Then the lights dimmed for a second. When they came back, there were more doors. Too many. Doors that hadn't been there a moment ago. All slightly open. All breathing faintly. I stopped walking. So did they. Because from one of the doors, we heard footsteps. Slow. Measured. Walking toward the threshold. But the door didn't open fully. It stayed half closed. Like something inside was deciding whether to step out. Jace whispered, "We need to run." But Mia shook her head. "No, running makes it extend faster." That was the worst part. She was right. We had already seen it. The more panic we showed, the more the corridor responded. As if fear was fuel. The footsteps inside the door stopped. Silence. Then a voice came. Soft. Almost curious. "You are walking correctly now." We froze. Because it wasn't an echo. It wasn't distortion. It was direct. Like someone standing right beside us speaking into the same air. Mia whispered, "Who's there?" No answer. Just breathing. Not from inside the room. From everywhere. The corridor stretched again. But this time we saw it happen. The walls moved. Slowly. Like skin being pulled outward. The distance between us and the far end increased while we were watching it. Jace grabbed my shoulder. "This is impossible." I didn't respond. Because I was watching something worse. The footprints in the open room were multiplying. Now there were more. Different sizes. Different directions. As if many groups had passed through at different times. Or the same group had passed through many times. Mia's voice broke. "We're inside a place that doesn't finish." The corridor lights flickered again. And for a moment, I saw the exit. Just ahead. Clear. Normal. Real. But when the flicker ended, it was gone, replaced by more hallway, more distance, more impossibility. The voice returned. Closer now. You are improving. Jace finally snapped. Stop talking to us. Silence followed immediately. And in that silence, I understood something terrible. The building wasn't hostile. Not in the way we thought. It was instructional. We weren't being punished. We were being trained. Mia whispered, "What does it want from us?" I looked down the corridor again and realized the truth was simpler. And worse, it didn't want us to leave. It wanted us to learn how to stay correctly. The corridor stretched one more time. And this time, none of us reacted. We just stood there, watching it grow, because we were starting to understand the rules. And somewhere deep inside Blackridge Asylum, something paused, like it was satisfied we were finally paying attention. We should not have gone into that room. That's the first thought that hit me when the door finally closed behind us. Not fear, not panic. Just a cold, simple understanding, like my brain had already seen the ending before I did. The hallway outside was quiet again, but that silence felt wrong. Too clean, too empty, like something had just stopped breathing the moment we stepped inside. And inside that room, something was still singing. Soft, broken, almost like a lullaby trying to remember itself. I turned slowly, my flashlight cutting through the dark. The door was sealed behind us. No handle, no latch, just smooth metal like it had never been meant to open from this side. Someone whispered behind me, "Tell me that's speakers." No one answered, because there were no speakers. Only walls. Old walls painted in a color that didn't feel like paint anymore. It felt like dried skin, peeling in thin layers near the ceiling. The sound came again. Children's voices, but not clear voices. Fragments, like laughter that had been stretched too thin. I took one step forward, then another. The floor was soft under my boots, not carpet, not wood. Something damp, something that gave slightly, like it remembered weight. And that's when I saw the first object. A small chair, too small for any adult, bolted into the floor, clean polished, like it was still used. Behind it, another chair, then another, row after row, disappearing into the dark, all of them facing the same direction. A small stage, but there was no stage in the blueprints, at least not in the official ones. That thought hit me hard, because I had read those blueprints myself. I had studied every inch of this asylum before we came in, and this room was not on them. I raised my light higher, and that's when I saw the restraints, straps hanging from the ceiling, thin leather, old metal rings, too many of them. Some were still swinging slightly, like someone had just been here, or was still here. A sound crackled from the corner of the room. Not a voice this time. A hum, low, rhythmic, like breathing through a broken throat. One of my team stepped forward. I think it was Mark, or maybe Daniel. I can't remember clearly anymore. He pointed at the far wall. There's something there. We all looked. At first I saw nothing, just darkness. Then slowly the darkness shifted, like it was moving away from the light. And shapes formed. Toys, dozens of them. Old dolls sitting neatly in a perfect circle, all facing inward, all looking at nothing. Their eyes were scratched out, but their heads were tilted slightly upward, like they were listening. The humming grew louder, and the singing changed. Now it wasn't random anymore. It had rhythm, like a choir trying to remember a song they were never taught properly. And that's when I realized something worse. The sound wasn't coming from the room. It was coming from the walls, from inside them. I pressed my hand against the nearest wall. It was cold, too cold. And then, a vibration, not mechanical, not electrical, something softer, like something on the other side was pressing back. I pulled my hand away immediately. Someone behind me whispered, "Do you feel that?" No one answered, because we all did. The singing stopped for half a second. Just one. And in that silence, we heard something else. Breathing. Not ours. Not human. Slow, wet, patient. Coming from above us. I looked up. The ceiling was covered in stains. But the stains weren't random. They were patterns. Lines. Like someone had been pressed against it over and over again. And then the singing started again. But now it was closer. Not from the walls. From inside the room. Right behind us. I turned fast. My flashlight hit the rows of chairs again. And for a second, just a fraction of a second, I saw them filled. Not empty. Filled with shapes. Small ones. Sitting perfectly still. Facing the stage. But when I blinked, they were gone. Just chairs again. Empty. Waiting. One of the others started breathing too loudly. It echoed across the room like it didn't belong to him anymore. And then the worst part happened. The song stopped completely. Every sound died at once. Even the hum. Even the breathing in the walls. Total silence. That kind of silence that feels like a hand covering your mouth. And in that silence, a single voice spoke. Very softly. Right behind me. "Do you want to sing with us?" I spun around. Nothing there. But the air felt different. Thicker. Like it had weight now. Like something had leaned in close and was still waiting for an answer. One of the team members dropped his flashlight. It hit the floor and rolled. The beam passed over the dolls again. And this time, they were all facing us. Every single one. I don't remember who moved first. Maybe it was panic. Maybe it was instinct. We backed away slowly toward the door. But the door was no longer where it was. The wall behind us looked identical to the others now. No seam. No edge. Just stone. One of us started hitting it. Hard. Again and again. But it didn't even echo. It absorbed the sound. Like it was eating it. And then the singing returned. Not from behind us. Not from the walls. From inside us. I felt it in my chest first. A vibration. Like my ribs were remembering a song I had never learned. My breath stopped for a second. And that's when I noticed something I will never forget. The toys were not arranged randomly. They were arranged like an audience. And we were standing on the stage now. I don't know when it changed. I didn't see it happen. But the chairs were gone. We were in the center. Facing them. All of them. The dolls. The restraints. The empty space that felt like it was waiting for us to perform something. And the singing started again. But now it was louder. Clearer. Almost joyful. Like children finally remembering how to be happy. But it wasn't happiness. It was repetition. Forced. Practiced. Endless. One of my team members fell to his knees, covering his ears. But it didn't help. because the sound wasn't coming from outside anymore. It was inside his head too. I could see it in his face. He was hearing something different than me. Something worse. Something personal. The room began to shift again. Slowly, like it was breathing with us now. The walls moving closer. Or maybe we were moving deeper. I can't tell anymore. The stage lights flickered, but there were no lights. Only the feeling of light. Like memory pretending to be real. And then the final thing happened. All at once, every doll tilted its head at the same time. And spoke. Not loudly. Not violently. Just softly. Like a classroom answering a teacher. We're ready now. The humming returned underneath everything. Louder than before. Filling the floor. The walls. Our bones. And I realized something I didn't want to understand. This wasn't a room. It was a place that rehearsed people. And we had just become part of the rehearsal. The last thing I remember clearly is one of them smiling. Not a doll. Not a person. Something in between. And then the song started again. From the beginning. Like it had never stopped. Like it never would. We found the exit. At least we thought we did. The door stood at the end of the corridor like a promise we had almost forgotten how to believe in. Metal frame, old glass, a simple push bar. Too simple. After everything inside that place, nothing should have been simple anymore. But it was there. Real. Or at least it looked real. No one spoke at first. We just stood there, staring at it like it might disappear if we looked too hard. Behind us, the corridor was still breathing. That soft, low hum under the walls, the same one that had followed us through every wrong hallway, every stretching passage that never ended the same way twice. Now it felt closer, like it knew we were leaving. Someone finally said it. "Is that outside?" His voice cracked on the last word. I didn't answer, because I didn't trust the answer anymore. I stepped forward first. My hand hovered over the bar. Cold metal, real cold, the kind that should belong to the outside world. I pressed. The door opened easily. Too easily. And that was the first wrong thing. We expected light. We expected night air. We expected anything that wasn't that place. But instead, we got the lobby. The asylum lobby. The same broken reception desk. The same cracked tiles. The same dead security monitor flickering in slow static. I froze. "No," someone whispered behind me. "That's not possible." But it was. We were back. Exactly back. Same broken clock on the wall. Same stains crawling up the corners like old memories refusing to fade. Even the smell was the same. That dry hospital smell that never leaves your lungs once it gets in. I stepped out slowly. My boots hit the floor with a sound I recognized too well now. Echo. The wrong kind of echo. Not empty, but waiting. And then I saw something that made my stomach drop. Footprints. Fresh ones. Leading in. From outside. I followed them with my eyes. And then I saw them. New people. Standing at the entrance doors. A group. Flashlights, cameras, gear bags, nervous energy. Just like us. Just like we had been when we first walked in. They were arguing. One of them pointing at the building. Another laughing like it was all a dare. A woman holding a phone up, recording. And I realized something that made my chest tight. They weren't leaving. They were entering. One of them pushed the door open. And the bell above it rang. That small, innocent sound. The same sound we had heard before everything went wrong. They stepped inside, and I saw myself in them. Not literally, but in the way they moved. The way they didn't believe the warnings. The way they thought this was just another abandoned building with a story attached to it. I wanted to shout. I wanted to stop them. But my voice didn't come. Because I remembered something worse. We had been warned too. And we hadn't listened either. One of my team turned to me slowly. His face was pale in a way that didn't look like fear anymore. It looked like understanding. "This is the start again," he said quietly. I shook my head. "No, we got out, we're out." But even as I said it, I didn't believe it. Because something felt off. The lobby wasn't exactly the same. It was cleaner. Not physically cleaner. Structurally cleaner. Like time had reset itself just enough to forget what we had done inside. The cracks were smaller. The shadows softer. Even the flickering monitor had a different pattern now. Like the building had been refreshed. Behind us, the door we came through was still open. But when I turned back to it, the corridor wasn't there anymore. Just darkness. Flat, silent, empty. Like it had never existed. One of the new explorers laughed from the entrance. "Yo, this place is insane already. Look at this lobby setup." Set up like it was staged. Like it was made for them. My stomach dropped again. Because I realized something worse. We weren't the first group anymore. We weren't even the second. We were just part of the loop. The new group walked deeper inside. Their footsteps echoing down the hall we had just escaped from. But I knew what they didn't. That hall didn't end where they thought it did. Nothing inside this building ended where it should. One of them turned their camera toward us. "Hey, you guys part of the earlier crew. Did you set this up?" I tried to answer. I really did. But my throat felt sealed. Because in that moment, I noticed something behind them. On the wall, a framed notice board. We hadn't seen it before. Or maybe it hadn't been there before. And now it was. Fresh paper. Clean ink. Recent. It listed safety rules. Asylum guidelines. Visitor instructions. All dated for this year. But the building had been abandoned for decades. That was the official record. That was what we had confirmed before coming. So why did it look updated? One of my teammates stepped closer to it. His voice was barely a whisper. "These rules, they weren't here when we came in." He reached out, touched the paper, and immediately pulled his hand back. Like it burned him. Not physically, but mentally. Like the words had changed something inside him. I looked closer, and I saw it. Between the lines of text, something written underneath. Faint, almost invisible. Like it had been erased and rewritten too many times. But still there. A single sentence. "You always come back when it's your turn." My breath stopped. Because I understood it wrong at first. Then I understood it right. We weren't escaping. We were cycling. The new explorers passed us completely now. Laughing. Excited. Filming. They didn't see the way the ceiling lights flickered when they walked under them. They didn't hear the faint humming rising again from below the floor. They didn't notice the lobby doors slowly locking themselves behind them. But we did. One of them turned back suddenly. Wait, did those guys just come out of? The door closed. Softly. Not slammed. Just final. And their voices were cut off instantly. Like the building swallowed them mid-sentence. Silence returned. The lobby felt different again. Heavier, not empty anymore. Occupied. One of my teammates started laughing. Not because it was funny, because something in him broke in the wrong direction. We were them, he said, and now they're us. I didn't disagree, because I could feel it. That slow shift in the air, like the building was deciding where we belonged now. Inside, outside, or somewhere in between. The exit behind us was gone. I checked again, just to be sure, but the wall was solid now. No door, no seam, just painted history, like it had never opened at all. And in that moment, I realized the truth I didn't want to accept. We didn't escape the asylum. We only moved to a different part of it. One that looked like the outside world, but still belonged to the same place. Somewhere deeper inside the system. Somewhere new groups would always find. Somewhere old groups would always disappear. A faint sound came from the hallway again. Footsteps. New ones. Approaching. And I knew without seeing them exactly what they would look like. Flashlights. Excitement. Disbelief. Curiosity. The same way we had walked in. The same way we had smiled. The same way we had thought we were different. The lobby lights flickered once. And I swear, just for a second, the reception desk phone rang. Even though no line was connected. Even though it should have been dead for years. I stared at it. And I didn't answer. But I already knew. It was never going to stop ringing. Because somewhere inside this place, there is always another group. And another door that leads them back in.